This Saturday is UFC Fight Night, Mexico City. Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg. And this is going to be my full card predictions. And it's actually a decent card. It's not a crazy Fight Night card, but it is a decent Fight Night card compared to some of the absolute horrific cards we've received this year at the UFC Apex. What do you know? The UFC has to sell tickets to a live crowd. They actually have to put some quality matchups on the card. Main event, obviously Moreno versus Erceg. Super relevant to the flyweight division. Co-main event, not super relevant to the division, but guaranteed to be a banger. Manel Torres versus Drew Dober. Then you have a very interesting, intriguing fight for the middleweight division. You have Joe Pyfer versus Kelvin Gastelum. So I'm actually looking forward to this Fight Night card. It's not just super low-level Dana White's Contender Series guys showing up for their, 10-10 paychecks. It's actually some quality matchups. Before we get into the predictions, do me a favor, guys. If you enjoyed these prediction videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, now let's jump into the very first fight of the night. We have MarQuel Mederos versus Austin Hubbard. Now, the UFC website doesn't let me click on it and expand it because the UFC's website's always broken. This is a relatively easy fight to pick. I think it could go either way, but there's no way I'm picking Austin Hubbard. Austin Hubbard is just a well-rounded guy who's been around forever, in and out of the UFC. Decently well-rounded, but not really excellent anywhere. He's coming off a loss against Alexander Hernandez. This was a very competitive fight. He tried to get Alex Hernandez down, really didn't have a whole lot of success with it. You look at the fight before that. He beats Mikel Figlak. Not a super impressive win there. Before that, lost to Kurt Hullabelt. I believe that was the Ultimate Fighter finale, which is crazy. That was a year and a half ago. That's insane. Gets triangle choked. Did decent in the first round. Gets submitted. I believe it was in the second round. Then you have MarQuel Mederos, who's 9-1 on a long win streak, coming off a win over Landon Quinones, who has decent hands. And in that fight, there was some grappling initiated. He showed some good takedown defense. Before this, he was on Dana White's Contender Series, got a brutal KO. Before that, he's fighting not the greatest opposition outside the UFC, 8-8, 8-5, 5-1. What I think this fight comes down to is, can Austin Hubbard grapple MarQuel Mederos? And I don't think he can. I think he might get a takedown. I think Mederos will be able to get back up. Mederos, it was kind of a grueling fight with Quinones, but he clearly won. And on the feet, if Austin Hubbard can't implement a wrestling-heavy game plan, on the feet, he's going to be outmatched by Mederos. Mederos has good hands. He's going to be much faster on the feet. He has good kicks as well. And I just don't know where mediocre Austin Hubbard can win this fight. He's going to have to be able to go out there, get him down, take him down, control him. And I just don't see that happening, especially at 33 years old. A guy who's 33 years old, 16-8, been around for a while. They're the same height. Hubbard has a slight reach advantage, but nothing significant, an 1.5 inch reach advantage. I'm taking the more useful, better striker who hasn't been brutally exposed in grappling. And it's not like Hubbard has some world-class wrestling at all. So Hubbard is relatively durable. I'm going to pick MarQuel Mederos to get it done via decision. Next fight on the card. They actually let me click on this one. We have Jamall Emmers versus Gabriel Miranda. Listen, I'm a bit of a believer in Jamall Emmers. I know that's the craziest statement I have ever made, considering he's Mr. Inconsistent, but he's not a bad fighter. You look at his last fight, he hurt Nate Landwehr, went after him, and then kind of ended up gassing himself out and then gets finished by Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is a guy who's super durable. Fight before that, brutally chinned Dennis Bazooka in the first round. Absolutely slaughtered him. Showed that he didn't belong in the UFC. Fight before that, lost to Jack Jenkins. I thought he won that fight. Out-grappled Jack Jenkins. Did very well on the feet as well. Before that, beat a guy who was undefeated but a little bit overrated. Ashkabab. I don't remember how to pronounce his first name. Hussein Ashkabab. Before that, lost to Pat Sabatini. Really not a whole lot of shame in that. Then you have Gabriel Miranda, who's lost his last fight against Morgan Charrier, which we just saw Morgan Charrier fight at UFC London, looked like garbage. Before that, beat Shane Young. Shane Young, who literally didn't belong in the UFC at the time. Before that, lost to Benoit Saint-Denis, got absolutely destroyed, and has been relatively inactive. I mean, he has 3 fights in 3 years. He's 35 years old. Jamall Emmers is 35 years old as well. But Gabriel Miranda is a guy, he's a submission guy. He wants to take you down and sub you. Now, Emmers does have super long limbs. He does implement the grappling at some points in time. I could see Emmers maybe getting him down and maybe finding himself in trouble with Miranda off his back looking for subs. But Emmers is smart. I don't think he's like a particularly dumb, low fight IQ fighter. And I think he knows Gabriel Miranda is going to have to find a submission to win this fight. And I don't see him getting it. I see Jamall Emmers is going to keep it on the feet. Lanky, he has a decent reach advantage, 3-inch reach advantage. It's crazy. Miranda's actually an inch taller. Usually, if you have a reach advantage, you have a height advantage, but not all the time. But I think Jamall Emmers is going to keep it on the feet. I don't think he's going to implement a bunch of grappling. And I think Miranda's just going to be trying to spam takedowns. He'll do all right on the feet. But I see Emmers just touching him up, man. Emmers has underrated boxing. I mean, look what he did to Dennis Bazooka, who, I mean, doesn't really belong in the UFC, but still has okay striking. Looked decent against Sean Woodson. I see Jamall Emmers stuffing the takedowns, avoiding using any offensive grappling. If they do end up on the ground, I can see Miranda like pulling guard, but I see Emmers being smart enough to disengage. And I think Emmers will land on the feet and just be able to outbox Gabriel Miranda. I'm going to pick Jamall Emmers to get it done via second round KO. I just don't trust Gabriel Miranda to get it done. It's going to have to be a sub on the ground, off his back, like a triangle or an armbar. I'm going Jamall Emmers second round KO. Drops him on the feet, jumps down. You know, if Joe Rogan was there, which he won't be, he'll be like, oh man, there's some real trouble here. But I think Jamall Emmers will find some shots and put him away via TKO in the second round. I'm going Jamall Emmers. Next fight on the card, we have Rafa García versus Vinc Pichel. I don't think either one of these guys is particularly good. They're both coming off losses. Pichel's on a 2-fight losing streak. Garcia's lost his last fight against Grant Dawson, where he got absolutely dominated in the grappling, brutally exposed, taken down the entirety of the first round, and got ground and pounded. And then the second round gets absolutely destroyed. Back shots dead, finish for Grant Dawson. Fight before that, he beats a bum, Clay Guida. Fight before that, Mahashate Heiser, I think is how you pronounce his name. Before that, loses to Jakar Close. Rafa García is like your middle of the road, kind of not ultra low level guy, but like not really even mid-tier guy. He's kind of in between that level. And then you have Vinc Pichel at one point was a decent fighter, but he's old. He's 42 years old. I mean, there's a 12-year youth advantage for Rafa García, which is insane. Pichel's coming off a loss to Ismael Bonfim. Tried to implement his grappling, had a little bit of success, but really got beat up by Bonfim on the feet and rocked. Lost to Mark Madsen before that, and that was 3 years ago. How can you possibly, like, forget about the skill sets, okay? They both want to strike. They both want to strike. There's no doubt about that. Pichel will probably start implementing the takedowns because Garcia is going to outstrike him because he's faster and has more power. But how can you possibly, regardless of skill sets, pick a guy who's 42 years old on a 2-fight losing streak? Now, there's been crazier moments in the UFC, so maybe Pichel lands a big shot and puts Garcia away. Maybe Garcia isn't fully recovered from that absolute beating and back shots dead from Grant Dawson. Maybe, but I'm not banking on that. I'm going to pick Garcia to get it done. Pichel's pretty durable. He's not a guy that has been knocked out 80 times. He's not a guy that's been known to be chinny. He got clipped up a couple times by Bonfim, but I don't think Garcia's good enough to be the guy that's going to really put a stamp on Pichel and put him away. So I'm going to go Rafa García via decision. I see him just beating up Pichel on the feet. I think Pichel will have some moments. It'll probably be closer than a lot of people expect it to be. But I see Rafa García outstriking him. Pichel maybe mixing in some desperation takedowns, maybe getting ripped to the body, maybe taking a lot of damage in the fight, and then eventually maybe taking off his gloves after he loses a 30-27 decision, laying him down in the cage and retiring after this fight. I mean, he's 42 and a half, so he's damn near 43. Bit of an exaggeration, but I'm going Rafa García to get it done. Next fight on the card, we have Lupita Godinez versus Julia Polastri. Maybe this is a bit of a hot take. I feel like I vaguely remember people criticizing me for this. Lupita Godinez, I don't think she lost to Mackenzie Dern. I thought she beat Mackenzie Dern. She was able to take her down. Mackenzie Dern was throwing a lot of strikes at air, and the commentary team was hyping her up, and I think that's why a lot of people thought Dern won, because she punches a lot of air. But Lupita Godinez, otherwise known as Lupi, obviously they have a Lupi on the UFC's website, is actually a decent fighter. She's not some scrub women's MMA fighter. I mean, she's on a 2-fight losing streak, but I thought she beat Dern. Verna Jandiroba, she lost. But before that, beat Tabitha Ritchie. That was a split decision, but I thought she won that as well. Beat Elise Reed, submitted her, beat Emily Ducote. It's not like great opposition, but it's not horrible opposition. Julia Palastri's coming off a split decision win against Corey McKenna, where McKenna was able to implement some grappling and clinch control. Polastri was decent in the clinch, landing good knees as well. It was a close fight. I had Polastri winning that fight. But I don't think Polastri is that good. Her striking isn't great. Her grappling isn't great. I could see Lupita taking her down, beating her up. I could see her outstriking her. Godinez is a decent pressure fighter as well. I think Polastri is going to try to clinch up because she doesn't like dealing with the pressure. It's going to be like Leon Edwards shooting that third round takedown against Sean Brady because he didn't like dealing with the pressure. And I think it's going to backfire because Godinez can out-grapple her. Now, maybe I'm wrong. She's 27 years old. She has a little bit of a reach advantage. She does seem strong in the clinch, but I think you only look strong in the clinch when you're fighting Corey McKenna, who's not very good at all. Corey McKenna's not good. I think I might even pick Corey McKenna in that fight. But anyway, losing to Josephine Knudsen. Before that, winning on Dana White's Contender Series. And then fighting not the greatest opposition. I mean, one of these girls she beat in LFA was 7-11. So I'm going to go Lupita Godinez. I'm going to pick her to get it done. Women's MMA, there seems like there's been a lot of finishes lately. But I'm going to go Godinez to win via decision. I'll say it'll be a moderately close fight. Maybe Polastri gets one close round, but then Godinez starts to pull out ahead. I'm going to go Godinez like a 29-28 decision win. Very clear cut. But you never know with women's MMA. We might see Godinez go out there and flatline her in the first round, which would be absolutely insane. But with the recent trend, who knows? Next fight on the card, we have Christian Rodriguez versus Melquizael Costa. Christian Rodriguez is a weird fighter because at bantamweight, when he's missing weight and having a weight advantage against a lot of these guys, he's looked incredible. And he beat Austin Bashi in his last fight. Again, able to stuff the takedowns, able to implement the striking. But it's like every single fight Rodriguez has looked good in, a lot of these matchups, it's like, oh, he had a weight advantage because he was fighting at bantamweight and missing weight. At featherweight, loses to Julian Erosa, gets submitted. Before that, beat Isaac Dalgarian again. I believe he missed weight for that fight. Beats him only via split decision. I think Dalgarian could have took that fight. Before that, Cameron Saimon, same thing, misses weight at bantamweight. Before that, Raul Rosas Jr. I can't remember if he missed weight, which fights he missed weight, but he missed weight quite a few times. This is the first fight where C-Rod doesn't have to worry about the takedown. So I'm very curious how good Rodriguez really is. Because Costa is primarily a striker. He's coming off a win against Andre Fili where he submitted him. Before that, Shaolin Norenbeke, rear naked choke against him. Before that, lost to Steve García, got absolutely ran through by Steve García. Costa has some grappling, and maybe that's what he'll default to, but I don't know. Maybe I am thinking of this wrong. I was thinking Costa's probably going to strike with him, but Rodriguez is pretty good on the feet. So maybe Costa's really going to try to mix in that grappling. He does have the last two submission wins against Andre Fili and Shaolin Norenbeke. But I don't know. I really don't know this matchup. I just don't trust Christian Rodriguez. Again, most of his good wins are at bantamweight, where he was a bit of a weight bully, if not literally missing weight. But I'm not a big believer in Costa by any means. Kind of inconsistent, not fought the greatest level opposition. Beat Austin Lingo. That's like a poor man's Nate Landwehr, a family dollar Nate Landwehr. Look, here's what I'm going to say. I think Rodriguez is the better striker. And I think if Costa starts to get outstruck, I think he's going to try to rely on the grappling and look to find a submission. Rodriguez is impossible to submit. He's not getting submitted. I mean, not impossible. I guess Steve Erceg, or not Steve Erceg, sorry. I'm thinking of Steve Erceg. Julian Erosa was able to do it. But that was, I don't know. I just don't see Costa being able to go out there and submit Christian Rodriguez, who has really good takedown defense. And also, even if he does get taken down, he's very good to scramble back up. Now, this is at featherweight, so we don't really truly know. We haven't seen him truly tested, but against Austin Bashi, he was able to do it. So I'm going to pick Christian Rodriguez to get it done. Not a super confident pick because, again, I just don't trust him. Who knows? He might miss. He might be one of those guys that misses weight at bantamweight, moves up to featherweight, and misses weight again. But I see Costa trying to strike early, losing on the feet, trying to implement the grappling. Rodriguez is not going to have to worry that much because Costa is a worse grappler than Austin Bashi, worse grappler than Isaac Dalgarian, in my opinion. So I think Rodriguez will be pretty confident to stuff the takedowns. He'll be able to let go with his hands. I see Rodriguez winning a decision pretty comfortably. I'm going to go Christian Rodriguez. Next fight on the card, we have Jose Daniel Medina versus Ateba Gautier. Listen, I don't think this is as easy of a pick as a lot of people are going to make it out to be. Because Jose Medina is a bit of a scrub. Lost to Zach Reese. Lost on Dana White's Contender Series against Magomed Gadzhiev Sulov. But Medina's kind of durable. And Gautier is a bit amateurish. You know, he has good power. He has good finishing ability. But Medina, you know, had a decent fight against Cháirez. I know Cháirez got Batista bombed by Cody Bumdidge, which is a bit of an embarrassment. But Gautier, even on Dana White's Contender Series where he got a finish, he looked super amateurish. Don't get me wrong. He was landing on the feet, but the guy he was fighting looked horrible. And then in the grappling, I believe he got taken down once or twice. Didn't look particularly great. Ended up on top and getting the finish in the end. I think it was second round. And had good ground and pound. But I think it could be one of those fights where you're like, oh, Gautier is good. I mean, Gautier is only 22 years old. He's super inexperienced. He's 6-1. Medina's 33 years old. Even though he's a scrub, I think he showed some skills in the Cháirez fight. And I think what I'm trying to say here is, in a roundabout way, Jose Medina could be one of those guys where you bring the young killer from Dana White's Contender Series who it's too early to be in the UFC. You try to set him up with the win against Jose Medina, and the next thing you know, it's second and third round, he's getting exposed. That's kind of what happened with Cháirez. I believe first round, Cháirez hurt him, looked for the finish. Medina ends up winning the second or third round because Reese was exhausted. He gets a desperation takedown and is able to kind of get top control, I believe, in the third round. So I think it was second round, Medina won, and able to get some control time and ultimately win the fight. But Gautier, I mean, lots of finishes, lots and lots of finishes. And I don't know where his cardio's at. There's no way I'm picking Jose Medina. All this to say, there's no way I'm picking him. I'm going Gautier. But how does he win? I could see Medina surviving. I could. He survived against Cháirez, Magomed Gadzhiev, Sulov, but neither one of those guys are particularly great. Medina has beaten scrubs outside the UFC, 4-2, 11-23 was his second win ago, 2 wins ago. Yeah, I'm going Gautier. I'm just saying, look, he could get exposed here. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to say Gautier finishes him. Cháirez had him hurt in the first round. I'll pick Gautier to finish him. But I just don't trust a guy who's 22, 6-1, looking inexperienced on Dana White's Contender Series, even though he got the finish. But I'll pick him to KO Medina in the first round. Drops him, finishes him with brutal ground and pound, vicious, aggressive, athletic onslaught of ground and pound. Gets the finish for Gautier. Next fight on the card. I believe this is the first fight. No, this is the featured prelim. We have Edgar Cháirez versus CJ Vergara. This is actually a really easy pick for me. I've never believed in CJ Vergara. There were people at one point in time hyping him up. This dude ran like Chelsea. He pulled the Chelsea Chandler before Chelsea Chandler. He pulled that fight. I mean, it was against Daniel Lacerda, I believe it was. Yeah, Daniel Lacerda eventually came back and got the victory. He's on a 2-fight losing streak right now. Lost to Su Amabayev, lost to Ramazan Tamirov, got absolutely destroyed by Tamirov. And I don't think CJ Vergara is that good. I think he's getting ready to be washed out to UFC. He's 33 years old at flyweight. Yeah, that's just not good at all. On a 2-fight losing streak, how can this pick be any easier, at least in my opinion? Edgar Cháirez, I know this is going to sound crazy, but he could be on a crazy win streak. The Joshua Van fight, he lost, but he hurt Joshua Van bad early. And again, okay, I guess he couldn't be on a long win streak because no matter what, he still lost that fight. But you look at his fights before that. Beat Daniel Lacerda, triangle choked him, which he shouldn't even have had a rematch him because he beat him in the first fight, but it was a premature stoppage, even though I thought it was a fine stoppage. Then before that, lost to Taishiro Taira. Taishiro Taira in the third round got saved by the bell off a guillotine attempt. And before that, winning outside the UFC via armbar. Cháirez has good boxing, good kicks. He has decent power as well, and his grappling is really good, and he has a nasty guillotine. And the way I see this fight breaking down or going down, CJ Vergara just kind of likes to use his footwork, strike from the outside. I don't know what it is about CJ Vergara's style. I'm not a huge fan of it at all. He's getting up there in age, and I think Cháirez can outstrike him on the feet. And even if Vergara is having some moments, I see Cháirez landing a good shot that could rock Vergara. And I think Cháirez is going to be chopping those legs as well to limit that side-to-side Chelsea Chandler, running movement that Vergara likes to have. So what I think is going to happen in this fight, Cháirez, if you make a mistake in the grappling, if you shoot a desperation takedown, if you end up on the ground, Cháirez starts looking for a submission immediately. He has nasty guillotines. And guess what? When Vergara starts feeling the pressure, when Vergara starts getting touched on the chin with shots, he makes mistakes. He runs for the hills. He starts flailing all over the octagon. It happened against the Ramazan Tamirov in his last fight. It happened against Daniel Lacerda, who's absolutely a scrub. And I think Cháirez is going to find one of those moments and submit him. I'm going to go Cháirez to sub him in the first round via guillotine. What I think is going to happen is it's going to be competitive on the feet. I think Cháirez is going to be kicking those legs, kicking those calves over and over and over again. And I think eventually he's going to clip him on the chin. I think they'll both be landing back and forth, but I think eventually Cháirez will land on the chin. Vergara will get hurt. He'll be fumbling all over the cage, circling around, maybe trip, maybe then end up on a single leg. Boom, Cháirez locks up a guillotine, finishes him in the first round. I'm picking Edgar Cháirez to get it done, and I think the UFC knows that. That's why they put Edgar Cháirez on this card. He's Mexican. They want the Mexican fighters to win on the Mexico card so they can build the fan base in Mexico even more and build up some guys that have some decent name value. Not that Cháirez is definitely going to have name value, but I see Cháirez submitting CJ Vergara in the first round. And I'm pretty confident even if he doesn't, he will submit him in this fight, or bare minimum, he will win this fight. I don't see Vergara winning this fight. I think Vergara is going to wash out of the UFC after this. At 33 years old, at a flyweight level, at a flyweight weight class, I just don't see him winning. So I'm going Edgar Cháirez, first round sub, guillotine. Next fight on the card, opening up the main card, we have Ronaldo Rodríguez versus Kelvin Borjas. This is actually a banger matchup. Lazy boy with that crazy fight against Ode Osbourne where he literally got starched out cold in the first round but recovered and the ref didn't stop it. 17-2, long win streak, decent boxing, decent grappling. Has a win against Dennis Bondar. Look, you know what's crazy? I know everyone's going to be picking Ronaldo Rodríguez. I was just watching fight tape of both these guys. And if Rodríguez can't get Borjas down, I think Borjas can outstrike him. I'm not saying it's going to be like a crazy skill gap on the feet, but I could see Borjas outstriking him. I really could. I think he's crisper on the feet. He looked good even in a loss against Joshua Van, especially early. He won the first round against Joshua Van. And then his last fight, he fought Alexandre Costa, who's actually super underrated and still getting better. And of course, he got TKO'd against him, back shots dead. But Ronaldo Rodríguez is fighting Ode Osbourne and almost getting stopped and arguably lost the decision. I thought you could have gave it to Ode Osbourne. Fight before that, Dennis Bondar, I don't believe he's even in the UFC anymore. Fight before that, fighting a guy who's 11-11. I know a lot of people like to hype up Lazy Boy, especially off that UFC Noche win. I could see him losing to Kelvin Borjas, and I flirted with making the pick. But I think Rodríguez will mix in the grappling just enough to be able to win some rounds in this fight, and I think his striking is just good enough. So while Borjas has shown decent takedown defense in the past, I think Rodríguez is grappling. I mean, he would throw up multiple submission attempts against Ode Osbourne, got close on a couple of them, escaped a deep triangle in the first round after he got rocked. I think Borjas basically has to stuff every takedown, keep it on the feet, and just outbox him and get comfortable with his takedown defense that he's able to just let his hands go. And I just think Ronaldo will have that slight edge in the grappling where it gives him helps close that skill gap on the feet. So I'm going to go Ronaldo Rodríguez to get it done. And also, man, he's just grittier. He's just ready to go to war. I mean, surviving that shot against Ode Osbourne where it looked like he got the light shut off was insane. And I think if this fight turns into a war, which they're in Mexico, I think Ronaldo Rodríguez is going to try to put on this big show. I favor Rodríguez. I don't favor Borjas. Borjas, I favor more in like a technical, competitive fight that's primarily standing. And I think if shit starts getting wild or Borjas gets rocked, I could see Rodríguez using his grappling and finding a submission. I really could. He's a really good grappler. He submitted Bondar 2 fights ago. He has a bunch of submissions, guillotines, and whatnot. And I just think Borjas, there's too many things that have to go right for him to win this fight. AK stuff every takedown, not be worried about the takedown at all because he's comfortable with his ability to shuck off Rodríguez, and then not get tagged on the feet at all and be able to implement just a primarily super technical boxing fight. And I think Rodríguez isn't going to allow that to happen. Even if Borjas gets out ahead in the first round, Rodríguez will find a takedown or find a shot that rocks Borjas. And so I'm going to go Ronaldo Rodríguez. He has nasty jiu-jitsu, so I'm going to pick him to get it done via sub. I think he'll be able to wear on Borjas as the fight goes on. So I'm going to say like a late second round rear naked choke for Ronaldo Rodríguez. But don't be surprised if Borjas somehow wins this fight. Don't be surprised at all. Next fight on the card, we have David Martinez versus Saimon Oliveira. This is a wild fight to be on the main card. David Martinez coming in, making his UFC debut after being on Dana White's Contender Series. Looked decent in that fight, primarily a striker, was stuffing takedowns against Xavier Franklin. Before that, he fought okay opposition just based on their records, 23-9, 5-1, 2-0. Okay, so not really that great. And then Oliveira's coming off 2 losses. Daniel Marcos, where he got brutalized, knees to the body. And then Tony Gravely before that, where he got out grappled in that fight. But he was trying to implement the grappling. And if you watch Simon Oliveira's fights, he's primarily a grappler. I think he has something like 11 submissions out of 18 wins. He's a guy that just spams the clinch, looks for takedowns, and looks to uses jiu-jitsu to set up a submission. David Martinez showed me more than enough in his last fight that he has good takedown defense, and he's the far superior striker than to Simon Oliveira. Simon Oliveira is not a good striker. He's 33 years old. So we got a, 7-year youth advantage for David Martinez. David Martinez is Mexican, okay? He's not a former Mexican like Henry Cejudo, okay? He's actually a Mexican. And this is a Mexico City fight card where the UFC, again, is trying to set up favorable matchups for these guys. This is an ultra favorable matchup for David Martinez to the point I'll say if he loses, he needs to get cut from the organization. Simon Oliveira is not UFC caliber. He's not that good. And he's one of those guys that just hasn't developed his striking at all. His striking looks atrocious. It looks herky-jerky. I think it was in the Marcos fight, or was it in the Gravely fight? I think it was a Gravely fight. He came out, threw a front kick, landed. But, man, his hands look horrible. He has decent kicks, but his hands look horrible. And all he will do is spam the takedown. He will try to clinch. He will look for takedowns. Martinez is going to be better there. He's going to shuck him off. He's going to rip him to the body like Daniel Marcos did, beat him up in the clinch, land far better shots on the feet. The question is, does he finish him? 11-1 David Martinez. Does he finish him? You know what? I'm going to say that he does. I was leaning maybe a decision. It's not like Oliveira's been finished a bunch. He's 18-5. I don't know how many of those are TKO losses, but it's not a bunch. I looked at it before I did this video, but I don't remember. But I think Martinez is good enough where he's not going to worry about the grapple. I'm going to pick Martinez to KO him. I'm going to say second round KO. I think the first round Martinez is really going to bully him a bit. It's going to be a clear win. After the first round, you're going to be like, oh, Martinez got this. He's dominating him in the first round. He's shucking off the takedowns, battering him on the feet, kicking his legs. Oliveira's just clinching, looking for takedowns, maybe even trying to pull guard. I think second round Martinez really starts to put on the pressure. Oliveira's already busted up, beat up, eyes are swollen. And I'm going to pick David Martinez, second round KO over Simon Oliveira. Next fight on the card, we have Raul Rosas Jr., a.k.a. Mr. Crimson Chin, versus Vince Morales. Raul Rosas Jr. was a bit overhyped, coming in as one of the youngest fighters of all time in the UFC. He kind of got exposed by Christian Rodriguez, but we know Christian Rodriguez, weight bully. Since then, 3-fight win streak. Terrence Mitchell, absolute scrub. Ricky Tercios, absolute scrub, but submitted him. And then most recently, Arichi Lang wins a decision there, and a kind of uneventful performance at UFC Noche, forgettable performance at UFC Noche. You have Vince Morales, who's 34 years old. I mean, this is insane. We have 14-year youth advantage for Raul Rosas Jr. 34 years old, Vince Morales lost to Elijah Smith a month ago. Lost to Taylor Lapulus, which actually isn't a horrible loss. Before that, win against Hunter Azure. All submission wins, basically. And Morales is kind of a dog. Like, don't count him out completely because Raul Rosas Jr. has to grapple. He doesn't have to grapple, but he's going to grapple. He's going to mix in the wrestling. Raul likes to get your back shots dead. Get your back shots dead, the rear naked choke. So Raul Rosas, being as young as he is, he could make a mistake and end up getting submitted. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Morales is going to welcome the grappling of Raul Rosas, and it's going to end up not paying off for him because he's going to get beat up on the ground. He's going to get controlled on the ground. Raul's very, very strong. He out-muscles a lot of these guys. And I think Vince Morales being willing to go to the mat. On top of that, Raul's striking is improving, and Morales' striking isn't great. It's not horrible. It's not atrocious, but it's not great. You know, looking back at some of these performances, Elijah Smith, he gets to a decision with Elijah Smith. Taylor Lapulus outstruck him to a decision as well, stuffed the majority of his takedowns. I think that Raul can easily use this as a fight to develop some of his striking. Has decent power, maybe clips Vince Morales on the feet and finishes him. But Vince Morales is pretty durable. And I think Raul Rosas Jr., I don't see Raul submitting him. I think Morales can fend off the rear naked choke attempts from Raul. But I'm not really sure. This is a weird fight because I'm not a true believer in Raul Rosas Jr. He was talking about being youngest champion, this and that. I'm not like a true believer in him. And I also think Vince Morales is actually better than a lot of people give him credit for, even though he's old and inactive, or not. I mean, he's not super inactive. Actually, he fought twice. I mean, it's crazy I even said that. Who am I mixing him up with on this card? But either way, he fought a month ago against Elijah Smith, so he's not actually inactive. Yeah, that was the dumbest thing I've ever said in my entire life. I'm trying to think. Who was I thinking of as inactive? I'm looking back on this card right now. Who was I thinking? Maybe it was Gabriel Miranda I'm thinking of. Either way, Vince Morales, 34 years old, 2-fight losing streak, wants to look for submissions, and Raul Rosas Jr. is going to welcome the grappling and has a significant striking advantage, in my opinion. I'm going to pick Raul Rosas Jr. to get it done. I'm going to say he doesn't submit Morales. He either KOs him or wins a decision. So I'm going to pick Raul Rosas Jr. to get it done via decision. I think Morales is one of those vets who can kind of level up Raul Rosas. Like, he's going to learn a lesson from this fight. Like, I'm not as good as I thought I was. But I'm going to pick, there's no way you can't pick Raul in this fight. I'm picking Raul Rosas Jr. to get it done via decision. Next fight on the card. We have the featured fight on the card. We have Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. B. Joe Pyfer, as Dana White would say, with his Dana White's Contender Series propaganda. How can you pick fat boy Kelvin Gastelum? How can you pick Kelvin Gastelum, man? He doesn't belong at middleweight. He does not belong at middleweight at all. How can you pick him? He beat Daniel Rodríguez in his last fight. Didn't even look good. Used the grappling in that fight. He's getting old. He's 33 years old. Joe Pyfer, 28 years old. Massive middleweight. Kelvin Gastelum, 33 years old. Small middleweight. Lost to Sean Brady. Got dominated. Kimura. Now, it doesn't look too bad considering what Sean Brady just did to Leon Edwards, who had his soul taken after Bilal dropped him on his bald spot. Before that, win over Chris Curtis, headbutt, won him that fight. Before that, lost to Jared Cannonier. Before that, lost to Robert Whitaker. Not horrible losses. 5'9". 5'9" for Kelvin Gastelum. 6'2" for Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer, unbelievable KO power. You look at his last few fights. Marc-Andre Barrio put him to sleep, doggy style position. Before that, lost to Jack Hermanson. Won the early rounds. Lost 3, 4, and 5. Would have won in a 3-round fight. And the reason I mention that, this is a 3-round fight. Joe Pyfer, it's not like he got destroyed in those later rounds. He clearly lost, but it's not like he was gasping for air, dying. So it's not like he's shown me he has decent cardio, is what I'm trying to say. He can go 3 hard rounds with Kelvin Gastelum. Fat boy Kelvin Gastelum, okay? Before that, Abdul Razak Al Hassan submits him there. Before that, Gerald Mearshart slumps him. Before that, Alan Amadovsky brutally KO'd him. Joe Pyfer is a huge middleweight with nasty power, with decent grappling, and Kelvin Gastelum is a 33-year-old fat boy who belongs at lightweight. To be honest, Kelvin Gastelum could probably make lightweight. If he had some of the, one of these professional nutritionists and he actually followed instead of posting, food orders on his YouTube channel and with his little rap song about taking it to Adesanya. He's riding the coattails of having a close decision with Adesanya years ago. I don't see a way Kelvin Gastelum wins this fight. He's gritty. He has decent boxing. He doesn't really quit. But this is a horrible stylistic matchup for Kelvin Gastelum. You tell me, where does he win, guys? I have no idea. Is he going to just outbox Joe Pyfer? Even if he lands more volume, Joe Pyfer's going to crack him with a shot and bust him up and rock him or snap his head back. Now, the one question about this fight that I have is Kelvin Gastelum is super durable. Super durable. Joe Pyfer, nasty finishing ability. Does he finish Kelvin Gastelum? I think if Pyfer finishes Gastelum, I don't think it'll be via KO. Gastelum's never been KO'd. He took some of the craziest shots against Israel Adesanya and was able to survive. I think if Pyfer wins, he probably rocks Gastelum on the feet and then maybe finds like a sub, like an arm triangle, like similar to what he did against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. But man, I think Kelvin Gastelum is like a future GFL fighter. I hate to say it. I've loved Kelvin Gastelum. I loved his career. He's always been an exciting fighter, but man, these last few years have been tough to watch. It really has been tough to watch. I mean, you're beating Daniel Rodríguez by the skin of your teeth. You're getting dominated by Sean Brady, no shame. not really beating Chris Curtis, in my opinion. You're 33 years old. You're coming in against the worst possible stylistic matchup. You can't implement his grappling against Joe Pyfer. He's going to be stronger. Pyfer's going to be stronger. He's way bigger. So I have to go Joe Pyfer. I'm going to pick him via decision. I think he's going to win via decision. I think he'll win probably all 3 rounds. Maybe Gastelum sneaks out a round, maybe the 3rd round if I had to pick one for Gastelum. But, man, it's going to be one of those fights where people start talking about Gastelum retiring afterwards because he's going to look so bad. And maybe he starts, I got to go back down to welterweight. And I don't know. He needs to go down to welterweight and fight Kevin Holland. Maybe he can get a win there. But I'm going to pick Joe Pyfer to get it done via decision. If he puts out Kelvin Gastelum, that's going to be insane considering he's never been KO'd. But I'm not going to pick him for that to happen. I think if anything, Joe Pyfer would get a sub, an arm triangle after rocking him. But I'm going Joe Pyfer regardless. I think he has more ways to win. I don't see Kelvin Gastelum winning this fight. He had to grapple against Daniel Rodríguez. He's not grappling Joe Pyfer. It's just not happening. So I'm going Joe Pyfer via decision. Next fight on the card, we have the co-main event. Manel Torres versus Drew Dober. This is a very, very tricky fight to predict. And I've been flipping and flopping back and forth. Because you have Manel Torres coming off that loss against Bahamondes at UFC Noche, where he got absolutely destroyed. But Bahamondes looked very good. Before that, beat Chris Duncan, hurt him, subbed him. Before that, Nicholas Mota, brutal KO, step-in elbow. Before that, beat Frank Camacho. Not a great win. None of these wins are great. But you have Drew Dober, who's been around forever. He's 36 years old. He's 27-14. So not only is he old, he has a lot of miles on him. He lost against Jean Silva. I mean, a nasty cut, but who's not losing to Jean Silva nowadays? Lost to Moicano. Almost won that fight, believe it or not. Rocked Moicano off a takedown attempt. Before that, beat Ricky Glenn. Before that, lost to Matt Frevola. Got KO'd there. Before that, beat Bobby Green, a.k.a. Bob Green, a.k.a. King Green, which I'm not calling him that. Drew Dober, he has nasty power, and he's decently well-rounded, and it's not like I see Manel Torres going out there and dominating him in the grappling, which is kind of Drew Dober's the hole in his game. But when you have 2 guys that fight like these 2 guys do, either guy can get KO'd. I could see this fight ending in a KO either way, but I got to go with the younger guy. I'm going Manel Torres. I think he's faster on the feet. He has a reach advantage, 3-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage, 6-year youth advantage. He's from Mexico, okay? So he's got the crowd in his back pocket if it goes to a hard-fought decision because the judges are probably swayed by the crowd. I have to go Torres. I'm going to pick Torres. There's too many things on his side. Plus Drew Dober, I mean, that chin, it's not going to survive forever. I mean, he took a lot of damage against Jean Silva, got KO'd by Matt Frevola. I picked Matt Frevola against him, I believe. And, yeah, I mean, when's his last good win? Ricky Glenn's a straight-up scrub. That's supposed to be a good win. I think Ricky Glenn even came in on short notice. So I see this being a fight where both guys land shots. I could even see Torres getting hurt. I think if Dober gets finished, I really could see him getting finished by KO or sub. He's known to have a decent chin. He survived, it was ended up being, I think, a doctor stoppage against Jean Silva. I think if Torres wins, it'll be similar to like what I was just describing with Joe Pyfer. I think he'll probably rock him on the feet and then maybe latch up a sub, similar to what he did against Chris Duncan. And Chris Duncan's pretty good. Chris Duncan has good grappling as well. And I think Torres has really underrated jiu-jitsu because he does fight pretty crazy and throw crazy shots on the feet. I just think in like the Bahamondes fight, Ignacio Bahamondes way too technical for Manel Torres. And I think I picked Torres in that fight, which I'm ashamed of, to be quite honest, because Bahamondes is really, really good. I should have known he trains with Bilal. But yeah, I'm going to go Manel Torres to get it done. It's just a matter of how am I picking him to get it done over Drew Dober. You know what? Drew Dober taking a lot of damage, took a lot of damage against Silva, took a lot of damage against Moicano on the ground, took a lot of damage against Frevola. Manel Torres has crazy finishing ability and crazy power. I'm going to pick Manel Torres to KO. I'm going to pick that Drew Dober chin to give out. I'm going to say Manel Torres second round KO over Drew Dober in the co-main event. But I could see it being a back and forth fight. I could see Drew Dober rocking Torres surviving. Maybe like a Drakkar Close Beneil Dariush type fight. If you remember, if you know, that was the origin of like the Joe Rogan reaction cam. Now he overacts for every finish now because of that. But I'm going to pick Manel Torres to get it done. I think he's faster on the feet. I think he has a decent reach advantage. I think he's more athletic. And I think Dober's chin, it's at about 10% now, maybe 15%. It's bound to give out in a brutal KO. And I think Manel Torres is going to take Drew Dober's chin. I'm going Manel Torres, second round KO. Next fight on the card, we have Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg. I wonder who you guys think I'm going to pick in this fight. I wonder. You know what? Before I even get into my prediction, comment down below. Who do you think I'm going to pick in the main event right now? Quick, hurry up. Hurry up. All right, listen. Brandon Moreno, former champion. Steve Erceg, former title challenger. 2-fight losing streak for Erceg. I believe he was supposed to fight Asu Almabayev before it got shifted around, and then Manel Kopp ended up fighting Asu Almabayev because I think Brandon Royval pulled out of that fight. Listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but in an alternate universe, Brandon Moreno is still champion. I know he's lost 2 out of his last 3, but hear me out, okay? So he was champion. He took the belt off Davison Figueiredo. I think there was a trilogy. He won the belt. No, he lost. No, they had a draw. He then won. Wait, there was a 4th fight. I'm done. It's crazy how much this sport moves on. Either way, he had a draw against Figgy. Then he beat Figgy for the belt. Then he lost a close fight against Figgy for the belt, which I thought he actually won. And then gets an interim belt against Kai Kara France, gets a 4th fight with Davison, goes out there, beats him, TKOs him exactly like I predicted. Then he loses to Pantoja. He loses the belt to Pantoja. Now, he's been in a lot of wars, and that's kind of my knock on Brandon Moreno. He's been in a lot of wars. I thought he won that fight against Pantoja. Razor close, not a robbery. I thought he beat Pantoja. Against Royval, I thought you could make the case that he beat Royval as well. Both those were split decisions. So in an alternate universe, Brandon Moreno's flyweight GOAT right now, and Pantoja hasn't defended the belt a bunch of times because you could have easily given him these wins. Then in his last fight, beat Samir Albazi after taking a good amount of time off. Steve Erceg, I got to be honest, we're elevating Steve Erceg off a loss. We're elevating Steve Erceg for lack of flyweight contenders because you look at his resume. He beat David Dvorak, beat Alessandro Costa, which actually is a decent win, beat Matt Schnell. All those are okay wins, but they're nothing great. But, we lack any contenders for flyweight, so let's give him a title shot against Pantoja. An undeserved title shot against Pantoja when Makayev deserved a title shot. He goes out there, has a relatively close fight with Pantoja, loses, gets out-grappled. I thought he lost pretty clear, but, some people were saying they thought Steve Erceg won that fight. He gets elevated off that loss, and people are like, man, he's definitely going to beat Kai Kara France. I picked Kai Kara France to beat Steve Erceg. He goes out there, gets slumped by Kai Kara France. With all that being said, how do you pick Erceg against Moreno? You have to be like, okay, maybe the damage is adding up on Moreno. I really thought Albazi had a size advantage. Looking back, it's one of my worst picks of all time. I thought Albazi has a size advantage. Moreno getting controlled a bit against Pantoja. And, taking all the damage he had, I thought maybe Albazi would win a decision, which was a horrible pick in retrospect. I'm ashamed of that one, to be quite honest. But we got to take ownership of the losses. We take the victory laps when Magomed Ankalaev systematically dominates Alex Perez. He runs for his life. So we got to take the embarrassments as well. Anyway, with all that being said, Matt Schnell, Alessandro Costa, David Dvorak, or are we going to take wins over Kai Kara France and Davison Figueiredo and Amir Albazi? Brandon Moreno could, again, arguably still be champion. I'd like to see him rematch Pantoja again, which I think technically would be a 4th fight, even though he's lost every single one. One was on The Ultimate Fighter. So you might not show in his record. Erceg's super well-rounded, good boxing, good power, good grappling, good defensive grappling. But I think Moreno beats him. I think Moreno's boxing is still very, very solid. I think he can outbox Steve Erceg. I think he can mix in the wrestling, get some control time against Erceg. Nothing great. I don't think he's going to dominate him in the grappling. I think this will be a very good flyweight main event. But look, Kai Kara France went out there and flatlined him. Moreno doesn't have like your one-punch KO flatline power. But I think the longer this fight goes, I favor Moreno. And I just think that Moreno's got the slight edge everywhere. I think Moreno's got the slight edge in the jiu-jitsu. I think Moreno's got the slight edge in the grappling. I think Moreno's got the slight edge in the boxing as well. So I just don't see Erceg winning this fight. Also, Moreno's got a 2-inch or inch and a half reach advantage. They're both relatively young. I do worry about the miles that have been on Moreno in all these grueling fights. Erceg does have decent power. I would give Erceg the power advantage. So you could see a fight where Erceg is able to find like a kill shot and put Moreno away, but nobody else has. So let's just say Erceg is going to. I think Brandon Moreno wins this fight. I think it's going to be a hard-fought fight where Moreno really starts to pull out in the later rounds. And I think Erceg will have some moments, but I just think he's inflated, man. I think a lot of people saw him have a competitive fight with Pantoja. They wanted to give him a participation trophy. They wanted to hype him up because he got out-grappled by Pantoja and landed some good shots on the feet. I'm not going to give him a participation trophy. And I know people are going to say, Joe, you're giving Moreno a participation trophy. I'm just saying in an alternate universe, he could still be champ. These are split decisions, okay? It wasn't even a split decision. It was a unanimous decision for Pantoja, which I thought it should have been. I think I scored it 3-2. I don't remember off the top of my head. Matt Snell's not that good, okay? Alessandro Costa is an up-and-coming prospect, but has improved since then. That was a year and a half ago. David Dvorak's not good. So I think Erceg is better than maybe I've kind of made it seem that I think he is, but I think there's a skill differential between Brandon Moreno and Steve Erceg. The way I see this fight playing out, hard-fought, relatively competitive, Moreno's going to be a clear-cut winner. I'm going to say 49-46 decision win for Brandon Moreno. I think he outboxes Steve Erceg. I think he lands the better shots. I think he does more damage. I think he mixes in the grappling and clinch work occasionally. Maybe he gets a takedown or two and Erceg works right back to his feet, but in a close round, that's kind of the round decider. I have to go Brandon Moreno. Former champion, fought much better opposition, at least got back in the win column against Amir Albazi, and the other two fights against Royval and Pantoja, who I both believe beat Erceg as well. They were razor close fights. So I'm going Brandon Moreno in the main event at UFC Mexico City. Let me know what you guys think. I'm very curious. Who you guys picking in the main event? Is anybody going Steve Erceg? 16% on Tapology is picking Steve Erceg. So, I guess that's kind of an indication of what the MMA community thinks. Have to go Brandon Moreno. Looking forward to the card. I'll be live streaming on Saturday night if you care to join me. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. Make sure to like this video, and I will see you guys in the next video.